What is going on, all my haunted followers? Guys, if you haven't done so and you're watching this video, please like and subscribe down at the bottom. I upload stories every Friday. Guys, demons are very frightening. A demonic haunting is nothing to mess with. In a lot of these stories, you're going to see that people simply mistakenly mess with things they shouldn't, and they brought these demons on. And that's mainly how they come about. Messing with the black magic, you might, like you'll see in one of the stories, a person who purchased a home that, had recent satanic rituals in it. So guys, sit back and prepare to get scared. I urge people to take this story as a warning because the events that happened to me almost ruined my life, as well as my boyfriend's. So please, tread lightly when it comes to the spirit world. Back a few summers ago, I was at an antique shop looking for something new for my apartment. I'll be honest, I do enjoy the darker things in life. I am fascinated by ghosts and anything spooky. I wanted to darken out my apartment, so to speak. I was exploring around the shop when I came across a Ouija board. I have never once seen one of these or used them. There was something spooky about it. I asked the shop owner and he said, "Oh, that old thing? I guess it was found in an old home when some owners had purchased the house and were scared out of their minds about it." I thought to myself, cool, so I purchased it. I brought it home and drilled these two little holes and mounted it on my wall. Weeks went by without anything ever happening, but little things here and there started to happen. My new apartment was always cold, so I asked my landlord, and he had several people come out to check the AC, stating everything looks fine. I kind of grew accustomed to the new, cold apartment. Another thing that started to happen was I could never keep flowers alive. Seriously, they would die within days. I chalked this up to maybe the being the cold apartment. But things just got scarier. One night, I was sitting on the couch watching Netflix when the Ouija board I had mounted on the wall just fall off. I assumed that maybe my mounting job wasn't the greatest, so I got up and put it back into the wall. I went back to sit back on the couch and it fell off again. At this point, I just put it on the table. Several days later, I was sitting at the table and the board was maybe 3 feet from me. And all of a sudden, it literally just flew and hit the wall. Of course, I screamed and tried to find a rational explanation, but I couldn't. But then it got worse. Days after that, I started to notice this awful smell. At times, I swear, it seemed like it would move. I had a pest guy come out, and he told me that there was anything. I really thought it was a dead mouse in the AC unit, but he checked pretty thoroughly and couldn't find anything. It was several nights after that. I was sleeping. I was suddenly awoken to what sounded like someone walking in my room. I slowly, groggily, opened up my eyes, and standing maybe 5 feet from my bed was this black mist. It was taking form, and I could see its eyes, these two deep red eyes. I screamed so loud and jumped from my bed. The police were called and the apartment was checked. I ended up staying with my sister. It wasn't until days later I came to the realization that all this activity was centered around that board that I had purchased. So I looked up a bunch of stuff online and found that if I was to bury at a local cemetery, a blessed ground, that the activity would stop. So that's what exactly I did. I have to say that the activity did stop, but now, I swear, I feel like someone's watching me all the times. Please, don't mess with these boards. I honestly don't know what this thing was, or if it was actually a demon. Whatever it was attached to this board. And again, I hold warning to anyone who wants to mess with these things. Don't. Anyone who's listening to this story and thinking, this sounds so made up, you can think what you want, but I have no reason to make this up. My reason behind this story is to tell others and to tell them to be careful with what they mess with. I hope by telling this story, I will eventually find peace. These events are a never-ending battle with what I believe is a demon. This started about 3 years ago. To this day, I was someone who was very much a loner. I didn't have much friends that caused me to seek out my own adventures. Not too far from where my parents lived is an old worn-down cemetery that most graves date back to the early 1800s. I am and have always been interested in history. I love grave rubbings. I find it very peaceful and it gives an old stone a new face. One summer day, I was in the graveyard just doing grave rubbings. As I was kneeling down, something caught my eye about 30 or 40 feet in front of me. At first, it looked nothing more than a cardboard box. So I got up and wandered over there. I was shocked. It looked like a mini altar of some sort, a cruelly made one, or a cruelly made Ouija board, with these burnt out candles and some words I cannot pronounce. What was more horrifying was the appearance of two eyeballs of some kind of animal. If I had to guess, I would say it was a goat. And there was also 3 to 4 bloody looking teeth, human teeth. I was so freaked out, I got up and kicked it and walked away. I didn't think any more of it, other than some creepy kids messing with stuff they really shouldn't. That night, I had the most horrible dream of 4 black cloaked figures standing over me with knives. And all of a sudden, they started mumbling something, and one of them took a knife and jabbed it into my chest. I woke up in absolute panic, and this went on for several nights. Eventually, my nightmares caused me to start sleeping during the day. I really thought it was over, the nightmares, because they did go away eventually. But that's when the activity started to happen. Very subtle things. Open cabinets, random lights, or sometimes the TV would be on, blaring when I got home. At first, I kept trying to play this off, but then it got really violent. One morning, I was getting ready for work. Something grabbed the back of my hair and pulled really hard. I was so freaked out. I screamed and ran and called my mom. I live alone, if you haven't figured out, as my parents helped me start adjusting to college life by, I guess, giving me responsibilities. Anyways, she calmed me down, thinking it was just nothing more than me being stressed out and overtired. So I carried on and I went to work. I got home pretty late, I would say around 11 p.m., between classes and work. I went to my apartment, and I swear it felt like a meat freezer. And this was in the middle of summer. It felt like -5 in my room. And I just chalked it up to the AC going crazy. I got ready for bed, and I was just standing in front of my bed when something scratched me. It felt like someone took a hot needle and just jammed it in the back of my skin. It hurt so bad. I ran to the mirror to find 3 scratch marks. Over the course of a couple weeks, things just kept getting worse. Things would fly off the counters, I would be pushed, hit. My mom eventually seeked out a priest. Yes, a priest, who came and blessed my apartment. It worked for a couple months, but just recently, I started noticing again random cold spots and this feeling of being watched. I will definitely update you with more as time goes by. For now, things are at peace, but I don't think whatever this thing is going anywhere. Sometimes It takes a really frightening event to make you a believer in, well, what everyone calls the spirit worlds. I am and have always been a loner. I can never truly find my set, if you will. This was until I got into high school and ended up meeting some really cool people. They like the same music as me and they even dress like me. I guess you can call us gothic. The leader, or well, the more outspoken one of them, I'll call him R for the story. R was a very outgoing and outspoken person. He was actually really cool. One day at lunch, R said, "You guys won't believe what I bought." He then pulled out a Ouija board out of nowhere from his backpack. I actually thought it was really cool. He goes, "I know a really cool place. We should go tonight." And everyone agreed. So that night, we all piled into, well, I'll call her Sarah for the story. We piled into her car, and we asked R, "Where are we going?" R just laughed and said, "We're traveling to Blood Tear Forest." This is a local forest where supposedly a guy skinned and left two girls to die out in the forest. Not so pleasant, I know. So we get out there and pile out, and R says, "Follow me," in a really spooky voice. We just laughed and we followed him. He ended up leading us into this opening. He sat down and said, "This is where the girls were skinned alive." And this whole time, R was carrying this black hockey bag. So then he opens it and pulls a few black candles out, as well as a board and this plastic bottle of red stuff. He looked at it and laughed and said, "Pig's blood, like I got from the butcher shop I work at." Honestly, at this point, I started to feel slightly uncomfortable. So R sets up the board, and then he places candles all around us in a triangle-like shape, trying to make a crude pentagram. And then he says, "Gather round." So we all huddle together, and R says, "Any dark forces, awaken thee, speak to us." We all just laughed, and for a few minutes, we were just messing around with the board and just having fun. That's when Sarah says, "What the hell is that?" I looked up, almost not expecting to see anything, but standing no more than 20 feet from us was this goat human thing. It had these glowing red eyes. I screamed and said, "Oh my God!" Art turned around and then told everyone to run. So we all ran back to the car. Not before R yells, "My back!" He lifts up his shirt, and that's when we see these 3 scratch marks. I was so scared. Luckily, we got out of there safe, and I have never experienced something like that ever again. And I'm lucky, I think. It's been a couple years, and again, I've never experienced anything like that. P.S. I just found out R several months back and is in prison for attempted murder on his own mother and father. I don't know if this has anything to do with what happened that night, but since that night, R was never the same. Thanks for sharing. Anyone who thinks they're gonna go out and purchase themselves some ghost hunting stuff, go out and start investigating without trouble, I assure you is a very big mistake. In fact, please leave this stuff to the experts. This happened to me when I was about 18. I had just watched a few episodes of the well-known show Ghost Adventures and became hooked on wanting to experience something of my own. I knew of an abandoned train tunnel not too far from my house, so I thought that would make a good start. Several days later, I found myself purchasing a voice recorder, an EMF detector, and a nice camera. All in all, I thought I had everything I needed, so I ended up recruiting my best friend and her boyfriend. That night, we ended up walking down to the train tunnel. Once we got there, we walked in deep, looking for a good spot to conduct EVPs. We actually were very taken away from the graffiti on the walls. 666 and a bunch of pentagrams. It was rather disturbing, but I thought we could use it to capture something. We found a really cool place to sit down and we began to ask questions. We must have been there for a few minutes when I can only describe a change in the whole place. I felt like something was walking around us. I'm sorry for the lack of description, but honestly, it felt like something was just lurking in the shadows. We started to push the EVPs further, trying to get the response. I then did something that was rather dumb. I said, "Okay, what is out there? You're weak and you got nothing." I'm not kidding. Out of nowhere, this board that was right next to my friend's foot just levitates and flies over my head. We all saw it. So we all have freaked out and started to run. I then felt something stinging on my legs. I stopped for a second to look down to find a whole bunch of scratches on my freaking leg. I was so freaked out. So we get to the end of the train tunnel and I stopped. My friend said, "Oh my god, let's listen to the recordings." So I did that. I rewinded back to the start. At first, we didn't hear anything. I then asked at one point, "Who are you?" And this very clear response said, "Your worst nightmare." We were all so freaked out. I never went back to that place, and I never will. Nor will I ever mess with anything paranormal. I'm glad that what happened to me because it taught me that you should never mess with something you don't understand. I implore you guys, don't mess with the paranormal. Anyone who thinks they're gonna go out and purchase themselves some ghost hunting stuff, go out and start investigating without trouble, I assure you is a very big mistake. In fact, please leave this stuff to the experts. This happened to me when I was about 18. I had just watched a few episodes of the well-known show Ghost Adventures and became hooked on wanting to experiencing something of my own. I knew of an abandoned train tunnel not too far from my house, so I thought that it would make a good start. Several days later, I found myself purchasing a voice recorder, an EMF detector, and a nice camera. All in all, I thought I had everything I needed, so I ended up recruiting my best friend and her boyfriend. That night, we ended up walking down to the train tunnel. Once we got there, we walked in deep, looking for a good spot to conduct EVPs. We actually were very taken away from the graffiti on the walls. 666 and a bunch of pentagrams. It was rather disturbing, but I thought we could use it to capture something. We found a really cool place to sit down and we began to ask questions. We must have been there for a few minutes when I can only describe a change in the whole place. I felt like something was walking around us. I'm sorry for the lack of description, but honestly, it felt like something was just lurking in the shadows. We started to push the EVPs further, trying to get the response. I then did something that was rather dumb. I said, "Okay, what is out there? You're weak and you got nothing." I'm not kidding. Out of nowhere, this board that was right next to my friend's foot just levitates and flies over my head. We all saw it. So we all have freaked out and started to run. I then felt something stinging on my legs. I stopped for a second to look down to find a whole bunch of scratches on my freaking leg. I was so freaked out. So we get to the end of the train tunnel and I stopped. My friend said, "Oh my god, let's listen to the recordings." So I did that. I rewinded back to the start. At first, we didn't hear anything. I then asked at one point, "Who are you?" And this very clear response said, "Your worst nightmare." We were all so freaked out. I never went back to that place, and I never will. Nor will I ever mess with anything paranormal. I'm glad that what happened to me because it taught me that you should never mess with something you don't understand. I implore you guys, don't mess with the paranormal. Back in 2013, I purchased a home in hopes of flipping it or making it into a summer getaway. The house sold for a good price, so I was quick on getting a loan and purchasing the property. No lie, the house needed a lot of work as it was a bank foreclosure. From the outside, it wasn't too bad, but the inside was, well, a nightmare. After several weeks, the house really started to look nice. However, that all changed one night. I was inside painting a stairway, and the home had a basement. I'd only been in there maybe 2 times, and at tops. It was a very old dirt floor basement, and I really had no use of it. But that night, I had kicked a breaker and had to venture down there. Walking down, I turned left to go to the breaker. Again, I only had been down there twice. I walked to the breaker when I noticed a board or a plywood blocking off something. Out of curiosity, I took it down. I was shocked to find a little room on the side. It was no more than a small closet, a small room. And I thought, cool, I had a storage room that I could put on the listing if I was going to sell the house. This wasn't until I really looked inside. On the walls was red-looking stuff, which I can only think of as blood, with very satanic writing. I was absolutely terrified. I quickly closed it up and went to call my wife on such discovery. That's when I heard something from behind me. Mind you, I was the only one in the basement. I heard, "Get out!" I turned around but didn't see anything. I have never ran so fast in my entire life. I left that night. The next morning, I went back and had to finish off what I had started, and thought that I was just going to nail off the room. So I brought my brother for help. I opened the front door to an absolute terror. Everything, all my work, walls, everything, were smashed. My tools thrown about. I couldn't believe my eyes. At first, I thought someone had broken in, but after a quick search and quick looking around, it wasn't possible. I had to put this aside and finish off the house. I wasn't happy, but I had to close off that room because I thought, if anything, that room needed to be closed off. So I go to the stairs, and as soon as my foot touched the second step, I am pushed, and I mean literally pushed as hard as possible. Thank God, in that second, I grabbed the banister and nearly fell down. I'm telling you right now, if I had fallen, I wouldn't be told this story. I looked around and couldn't see anything. I looked up and looked down. But that's when I peered into the dark basement, and I see two red eyes peering at me from that small closet. Long story short, I ended up putting the house on the market as sold as is. I hate to have given up that house, but whatever forces are in that house, I won't mess with. Well, all my haunted followers, guys, I hope that you enjoyed those stories. Again, demonic hauntings are very frightening to deal with, and I can't express this enough. Anyone who believes that they're dealing with a demonic entity, a demonic haunting of any nature, you need to seek help right away. These type of hauntings are all about timing. Okay, you don't just try to live with these kind of things. It's not like you're dealing with a human spirit where you kind of just, I think essentially there's some hauntings out there with human spirits that you could live with. These are not things that you want to just live with or ignore. Remember, as I said in a video, in one of my videos I had posted several months ago about demonic hauntings, that a demonic is not haunting a location. They're haunting you. They're there to terrorize you, to break you down enough to thus possessing you, if you will. So again, this is all about timing. getting a hold of a paranormal team that can deal with this, getting a hold of the church that may be able to come out and bless the home. And blessing the home and doing all these things may not work. And that's a frightening thing about it. But there are necessary steps that you can take to prevent ever dealing with these things. You know, if you come across, and with some of these stories I was reading, especially the one where the girl found the altar, if you come across something like that, leave it. Walk away from it. Don't mess with it. Don't touch it. Simply knocking it over, you could have angered something. You could have, you could have released something that was being held there. You don't know that. The same goes for the man who, when really wasn't your fault by opening that doorway, taking on that board. But I would have just put the board back up and left it, and not had searched more into it. But if something like that, maybe this possibly you did the right thing by just leaving the home and just, selling it. But again, when I say that demons don't haunt locations, they haunt people and terrorize, not haunt, terrorize people. You can move from a location, they're going to follow you because they're trying to possess you. They're essentially they're stuck to you. So you got to be careful. You got to be really careful of these things. Don't ever mess with Ouija boards. Please, everyone who's watching this, please don't mess with Ouija boards. They're not toys. You're opening a portal, and anything can come through that portal. I can't express that enough, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Like and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. Next week, I am looking for encounters with vampires. I'm not talking about your run-of-the-mill psychic vampires. I want real stories with what you believe is a vampire. And we're talking Vampire Diaries, real-life vampires. Send those stories in to alexune101@gmail.com. Again, if you haven't done so yet, give me a like, give me a subscribe. I upload videos every Friday. As always, happy hauntings, guys.